Welcome to Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek. I'm Mo, and every week I'm asking today's funniest artists how they got their act together. This show isn't about their best or most famous work, but it's about the work that means the most to them, their creative process, and why they make their art. This summer, I'm at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with my stage play, Worse Than You. So for this season, I'm chatting to Fringe headliners. And today's show, we have two very special headliners joining us. This Emmy-nominated sketch duo has written for shows like Saturday Night Live, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and they were named Variety's Top 10 Comics to Watch. The Seagulls Outside approve. Their sketch comedy videos have amassed over 100 million views online, and they have performed sold-out runs at the Edinburgh Fringe, the Soho Theatre, Montreal's JFL Festival, and all over the U.S. Please welcome to the pod, Brian, McElhaney, and Nick Kocher. I can do it. I did it right.
You kind of did.
Also
got there.
known as BriTANicK. Ready, set, show.
And we're in.
Yay, show.
I was going to say that was kind of a perfect intro because you not knowing if Nick's last name is Kocher or Kocher is kind of his last name.
That is canonically correct.
Didn't you say that your family doesn't know?
Well, they agree on something that Nick doesn't agree on.
There's a lot of debate about it within the family. But so my father says Kocher,
Okay.
and I say Kocher. But my grandfather says Kocher.
Oh.
And the reason is
And his father says Kocher.
Yeah.
It goes back.
Yeah,
and forth.
it's a
flip-flops.
recessive gene.
Well, it
yeah.
actually, so the reason is I was getting bullied in school. I was born Nicholas Kocher, and then I was getting bullied all throughout school
Okay.
and called Nick the Dick Kocher. So I stood
That's
up to
that's
those
such
bullies.
a jump. Okay, keep going. So I'm going to change my name.
Yeah, I stood up to the bullies by changing the pronunciation of my last name, being like, that'll fix it. It
Yeah.
didn't fix anything.
No, yeah.
But then I was like, I started going by Nick Kocher.
Okay.
And I found out that my grandfather also pronounced the last name Kocher, and that my father had changed it to Kocher, and I asked him why.
Was he bullied?
Yeah, because he was getting bullied in school. They were rhyming Kocher with kosher,
Oh,
and
so
back then being Jewish was not top notch, as opposed to the
because of
cakewalk
now,
it is
yeah.
today.
yeah. Wow. The lines of trauma within the pronunciation.
Yeah, and then the even crazier thing is my great grandfather pronounced the last name Cocker, and my grandfather changed the pronunciation
Teeing
to
them up.
Kocher.
Yeah, they're teeing them up for bullshit on that.
So it's a long line of cowards in our family.
Oh, you know what? It's a long line of people protecting their peace.
Yeah.
Well, we are here talking about your Fringe show and also mainly just your artistic process, which I think is very interesting when it comes to like the intimacy of duos, especially over your life. But for everyone listening, can you give us a too long didn't read about your Fringe show this run?
Sure. We are doing a show this run called Dummy. It is our second full-length run at the Fringe. Our first one we did 2 years ago was a sort of a standard sketch show. It was like all of our best sketches for the past 15 years we've been performing live on stage. You know, sort of sketch blackout, with like a through line that we added in that was really kind of nice. This is a very different show. It's as we call it at the beginning of the show, it's a free-flowing hour. So there are sketches, but they're kind of hidden within the show. It's a lot of us talking to the audience. The show ends up kind of collapsing in on itself and becomes this kind of like science fiction deconstruction of sketch. So
It is infinite. Yeah, it's like incredible.
there's something
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit infinite about it. So it's a new form for us. We are obviously using the BriTANicK style. That's just how we always write. But I think the clowns have gotten their hooks into us a little bit, and we've like done a lot of things in the show, like with audience participation and kind of letting parts of the show kind of be more open instead of being tightly scripted that we've never done before. And yeah, I don't really know how to explain it. It's like it's a very strange show.
It's very much a reaction to our first run at the Fringe because we were doing the show where it was really, really tightly scripted.
Yeah.
It was sketches where we're in character. There is very firmly a fourth wall up. And then at times we would have moments of breaking it, but most of the show we're behind the fourth wall, and we got frustrated with that a lot during the first run because it was like, oh, I want to be able to acknowledge things happening in the crowd. And so the second show, there was like this kind of we kind of talked to the audience the entire time.
But is this the first time you've run into it? Because you've been doing sketch forever and there's never been the impulse to want to engage?
Not really. I mean,
Not really.
Yeah, we didn't really, in UCB where we kind of cut our teeth, we just sort of learned sketch as this sort of like, occasionally there would be like wandering into the audience and stuff or kind of breaking the fourth wall, but we really enjoyed just like tightly scripted sketches
Boundaries.
that that ended with like a hard black outline. It's sort of like what our YouTube videos look like, just kind of on stage. And that's been really fun for us. But this, and like for this past year we've been working on it, it's been frustrating me because I've constantly been saying, I don't know what this show is. I don't know how to play this. I don't know if I'm in on the joke, if I'm not. Am I character or am I Brian? And we've kind of just had to let go of that and just be like, just be silly. Just like, it's funny and don't worry too much. We got a little bit into the logic of it too much for a while, and we're like really trying to narrativize the whole thing and make sure everything I said made sense with everything. But now we're like, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like there is quite literally time travel in the show. And whenever you are dealing with that, it's like you kind of have to go, all right, look, this is impossible. The logic is not going to work.
Yeah, well, it's not, but
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, okay. Well, we can talk, quantum physics or whatever. But what I think is exciting hearing about that is that I kind of love to work in meta spaces where it's like you don't know what aspect, but you do have to release a lot of identity. And I think in your work, people have really gotten to know you, but there is that veil and that separation of like, that's not us, those are our sketches. Whereas here, that line starts to get blurred.
Yeah.
And that level of security of identity of how you're perceived really gets tested.
Yeah, meta is kind of complicated to do right. I think when you're a young comedian, you get really excited about meta because it's like, look at me, what's real, what's not.
Inception, brother.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of, it can be used as an easy crutch to be like a gimmick to like get out of a sketch. So you have to kind of like use meta wisely sometimes because it's like if you just kind of use meta as like that wasn't real. It's like, it's kind of an easy, quick laugh.
You also betray all the work you've
betray
done,
everything.
what they trust of them.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can get a laugh out of it, but then you have to it can kind of ruin it in the greater aspect if you're not careful with it. So yeah, you just have to follow your gut. And
we did a couple of work in progresses in New York and LA before this. And I remember, and I would talk to the audience afterwards and be like, what was your favorite part? What was your least favorite part? And one audience member was saying, they were like, I have a question for you. How meta is too meta? And I was like, I mean, honestly, our threshold for that's going to be way higher than yours. It's we'll do as much as the audience seems to go
the fact
along
that you're
with.
Asking that question means we might have reached
It's
our
like
limit.
we probably went a little too far over at that show.
I always joke that at the end of my show, when me and Sudi first started developing it, I was like, I want them to feel like the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And they are stuck in the room.
Bored out of their minds.
Forever. And but they feel infinity, but they don't know how they got there.
Okay, yeah, that's a huge thing to shoot for.
Yeah.
Do you think you hit it?
It's actually chill.
It's actually pretty chill. Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of a theme here. I'm very Kubrickian and I'm harmful to my actors. That sort of vibe.
I just
driven
want
one
the-
insane.
Yeah, exactly.
I just really want the audience to be like, that is a big baby.
God, is it in vitro or is it?
That's the one thing someone takes away from the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
That baby was.
Now that's a big baby.
They have no perspective. But I think it is exciting, and also like one of the biggest things we would do after a show is ask people, like you were checking in. We'd be like, "Did it make sense? Did it make sense?" And it's hard though because you can't have it make sense,
Yeah.
and you got to release that.
And some people aren't going to get it.
And
you gotta
then
just
a lot of people aren't going to be honest with you either. They're going to be like, I thought it was great. And
Do
it's like,
people really placate you guys?
Yes, I mean I can tell.
I think most people don't want to like, because it's like we're asking for like, what did you not like? And I think a lot of people are like, I don't want to get into this with you.
I can tell because like if I'm like, is that a good show? When it's not, they'll be like, yeah, that was good. There's
Oh,
this sort of
sure.
like, yeah.
There's
Like,
no specificity.
Yeah, it's like a weird like shrug. I can like hear it in the voice kind of like because when it's good, they go, that was so fucking good.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my, like truly. But when it's not, they're like, yeah, you guys have a good show. What are you worrying about? It's good. And I'm like, I can tell. I can just see that in your eyes that it's not working.
I come from sports and like I don't respect that. I'm like, don't like, hey, like it's actually not kind to like just like when you're trying to better yourself and you trust someone enough to ask.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that from sports because it's like sports is something where it's like there's such a clear-cut answer.
Yeah, that's true.
Did we win?
The numbers said,
won.
yeah.
Did we win the game?
I missed 40 free throws. Is that good? Yeah.
No, shoot it to me straight. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, well, what's funny is we had our worst show we've ever had in 15 years of performing.
Can we tell this story?
If we want to, our first night. And what's interesting is after the show was over, Zach Zucker, our producer, came up to us and he was like, "That was bad."
Good for him.
We were
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, we know." And he was like, "Guys, that was so bad. What are you doing?"
Yeah, and he's like, "Here's how you need to fix it." And we're like, "You're wrong about every single one of these notes,
Well,
but
he had one
you're correct
great one.
that which one?"
He said you weren't playing.
Oh yeah,
And that was really what I
that's
think
a
the
good
biggest
note.
part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't having. I mean, I think the primary thing we did wrong in that first show is we were not having fun. We had been changing the show every single show kind of leading up to the Fringe, and then we tried a bunch of new stuff on the first night there, and so it was like I don't think it was the right idea, but it was also unrehearsed. We weren't comfortable with it, and it was like we weren't having fun.
And also we had a lot of just like we were trying to make this big narrative work that we cut out a lot of that was just like a lot of like talking and not it was more like trying
Expositions.
to make it, exposition to try to feel arty when it wasn't funny, and then we ended with a horrendous ending that
so
the UK audiences said no thank you, never
we
again.
did this ending in New York and LA, and it killed. And I had been like, I don't know if this is right, but all of our friends were like, you have to do it.
Your
It's so
mother
funny.
was like-
My mom liked it. And I was like, all right. And that was kind of the thing that I was like, I guess we should do it because this is
Yeah.
the type of thing my mom would
Universal.
not like.
Yeah.
Because what the ending was,
I don't want to say it.
Brian sucking my dick while he pees into my mouth. And not my actual dick and not actual pee.
No, but you guys work to make it look real.
Yeah, well,
To the extent we can. The dick does stretch to this length. So.
yeah, the dick that Brian was sucking was an incredibly stretchy dildo.
I mean, it was a Natalie Palamida's penis.
Yes.
It'd have been, it'd have
Yes,
been
Natalie
huge, yeah.
Palamides, for those who don't know, is an incredible clown
Incredible.
who uses a lot of very stretchy dildos in her show.
And when I say the clowns have got their hooks in us, that's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
We started doing that because we've done too many stamp towns. And
Yeah.
Stamptown, for those who don't know, is a chaotic variety show where this type of thing happens all the time.
And that sort of, again, we
rewarding.
were saying like that subversive sort of like risk. And it's like, it is fun because it's like you fly too close to the sun and
Yeah.
then it's a silent room and you're sucking a dick.
Yeah, I know. The only one that told me not to was David Zucker, Zach's brother in New York. He was like, I think that ending is really bad for you guys.
Yeah.
I was like, everyone says they love it. He's like, I don't want to see BriTANicK do that.
Oh.
And he was like, you guys, that's not what you do, and that's not what we're here to see you do. And he's like, it felt really weird to watch you do that.
Yeah,
and
and
I completely agree.
Just to sort of explain also for people who are really
Absolutely.
scratching their heads,
Yeah.
the reason that we did that is it did like quote unquote make sense within the show we were shooting for, which is it's like there's
Good
a
luck.
thread in this show about me getting bullied, and I've set a trap for my bully in which a poison arrow gets shot into his dick, but then I set off the
Brian's
track.
face.
The poison arrow gets shot into my dick, and so Brian is sucking.
Stand on your business, Brian. Stand. Let him
not
speak.
going to.
Yeah.
Brian is sucking the poison out of my dick while peeing the antidote into my mouth because he had accidentally drank the antidote
And I've also
earlier.
proclaimed throughout the show that I think that we are above doing like dick
Blue,
humor and
yeah.
blue
Yeah.
humor and stuff. So then now I have to confront that as I suck the poison out of your dick
Yeah.
and piss into your mouth, which I guess logically that makes sense. It's like a cathartic moment for both our stories, but it's like no
But
one
it's
cares
also
about our
a lot of
stories.
mental work for the audience to remember all the
Yeah.
storylines tying together.
And I think that's the audience
Yeah,
is like,
yeah.
we don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
We just see what's happening here.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the funniest thing about it, I am actually very glad that this happened because it has created one of the funniest things in the world, which is everyone who was in the audience for that first show is going to then talk, because we took all of this out of a show.
And the show has
after
a nice,
that second.
sweet ending.
Yeah,
now.
it's a very
There's
sweet
literally
ending.
a child's voice. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
it's so sweet.
yeah, it's adorable.
So the show now has this sweet ending, but everybody who saw it the first night saw this dick sucking, dick peeing ending and is going to say to an audience, oh yeah, I saw the BriTANicK show. What'd you think of that dick sucking, peeing in the mouth bit? And everyone who's seen the show since then will be like, what are you talking about?
Fully gaslit. Fully
Yeah.
gaslit.
yeah, we like to gaslight our
Well,
audiences.
that literally happened. We were at the table. It was me, Nick, and Matt Gehring. And Matt Gehring saw it the first night.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, the dick part. And I was like, what? And he was like, the part where, Nick, the part where and I'm looking at him like, hey, you're not okay, man. Like, because I had seen it. I was like,
Did you daydream during the show?
Every show Matt Gehring scenes, he's linked it into the dick sucking scene.
But what I'm also curious to is hear, like, you're saying you're making tons of changes, and I'm the same way where I'm like constantly wanting, but are you making them because you personally feel something didn't hit or because of the reaction of these audiences? Like, where is the impetus?
Well, honestly, I think it's more coming from us because this show, I'm curious what you think, Brian. I mean, we're in a different space than we were the first year. We're in like 145 seat theater now.
Huge.
Our first run was 74 seats. And for our first run, we were getting like we had a great first run and the reaction to the show was great, but audiences were more quiet during that show. And part of that is going to be because it's a 74 seat house. It's just not as loud when they all laugh. And then also you can end up when you have a smaller house that like 30 of the people there are just not your audience. They're not, or they're quiet or something like that.
Appreciating, not engaging.
Whereas in an 150 seat theater, you know, if you have 30 quiet people, it still feels like the show's going really well. So I think this show gets way more audible laughter all the way throughout it. But what we've been trying to really figure out is the kind of like, there's a lot of things in the show that we're not happy with yet.
Sure.
Like the show's been getting a great reaction, which we're very grateful for, but we're like, this moment is not quite working. This moment's not quite working. There's like some overarching themes that we're kind of like, it sort of seems like nobody really cares about the overarching themes as much
They
as
mean
us.
something to you, though.
Yeah, but so
They're meaning less and less by the day.
Yeah.
But I will say there's an authenticity to what you're speaking about because a lot of times, especially when you're here and people are like, well, reviewers this, that people are like, it's good, just like whatever. And you're like, no, I didn't make this for that. Like I made it because I had a need and I wanted to feel a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, once it feels the way I want to, people might not like it as much, but I need it to feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, for example, like the big reviewers have already been in
So you can
now.
fuck around.
So we're
Really
now
fuck them
it's like
Gaslight the rest.
like, you know, we're at this point we're just changing it for ourselves.
It was just so beautiful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but hopefully the show keeps continuing. Also, you want laughs every night, so it's like. Yeah. But I do think we are going off of mostly what isn't working. Like if something's getting huge laughs, then we're keeping it. I think the sections I'm most concerned with are the ones that are kind of touch and go every night. Like there are some things that get undeniable laughs no matter what. Like we have one joke in the show that we've never had a more guaranteed laugh ever. It always works.
Which one are you thinking?
Making no sense.
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
The reveal of that video. And then
It's really good.
some stuff that like sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. So it's like, what's going on there? There's some stuff that I think are just it's kind of flat or it's like boring for too long always. And that's the stuff I think that's our first priority to fix most of these nights. We have a few moments that we're like, this just is never really fully working. And so we're...
Yeah.
It's hard though because there's so many factors that go into that and you have to just intuitively sense like, is it cultural? Is it because they're drunk? Is it because it's late? Is it... And you're like... Am I getting an accurate barometer of whether or not this actually worked?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, so we just added a 3-minute sketch to the show last night. It's this...
it's called telepathy. We're like
I'm already in.
We're speaking at the same time throughout pretty much the entire sketch.
Perfect.
And it's interesting because, like, we added it, and I think it got, like, an interesting reaction where it wasn't, like, the most laughs. But then afterwards, people were like, we were sort of asking people, what did you think of that? And people were like, it's really impressive.
Yes.
And so we're sort of like, I think we'll try keeping that in for at least a bit longer to see if we can get it to because I think it's also, the first time you try it, you're a little uncomfortable. I think there's some performance issues that'll get ironed out as we do it. And so we're kind of trusting that will start hitting harder.
It is hard as comedians, though, and I think of Natalie Palamides as an amazing example of this. She is so impressive that the audience wants to stop and just drop their jaw. But then she has to work another level to say, oh, also you're going to laugh and not be distracted by how impressive I am.
That happens sometimes. If there's someone who's extra impressive, you will just sort of just watch them instead of laugh at them, which maybe is good. I don't know. On stage, you can feel like, why is no one laughing? And it's like, because you're kind of like you're juggling 9 balls right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's also like, you know, like I barely actually laugh during shows audibly. I'm kind of a nightmare audience member, but it doesn't mean I'm not enjoying it.
Because you're also a comic. You're looking at it, you're appreciating it, you know.
That's true.
And also these audiences are insane because they've all seen 10 comedy shows that day, and they're in the hottest theaters in the world, which
I'm kind of surprised they're laughing at all, because sometimes when I get to see 3 shows a day, but the third one, I'm like, even if it's good, I'm like...
I'm full of cheese and, you know, different drinks, and I'm like, yes, I loved your work.
Right.
Yeah, it's. But you know what I did want to point out before we move into any other space is that you guys are talking about incorporating your inspirations, right, your current ones. And I do think what is fun about this show, and I haven't seen other live like sketch shows that you've done, but it feels like maybe it's different, is that the physicality that you have in this one is so fun and silly and clownish. Like even the marionette, there's an aspect, there's the aspect of you guys climbing on each other. It is so physical that's where I feel like you guys have incorporated successfully that clown into who you are.
Good. Yeah. Because I was worried that the first half of the show doesn't have enough physical humor, because we're kind of just like, there's a lot of auditory gags of us standing and like listening. And I've been like, God, we need to get more physical. But I guess we kind of pay for it in the second half because it does get pretty physical. I mean, yes, I have a marionette routine that's like, it is every muscle in my body is used for it. And then we got Nick's shoulders. Then we have to run around a lot during the
and then that was also part of the impetus of adding this other sketch in, is we were like, let's break up. And I kind of think that even though this sketch didn't hit super hard with the audience, I think it may have helped the show as a whole. I think it made some other stuff hit even harder.
Give more breathing space between.
A little. I think it's also like, you know, a lot of the show is us talking to the audience, and like we're doing sketches, but they're hidden in the banter.
Yes, yeah.
So this is like a very clear, we're doing a sketch that has a beginning and an end. And I think maybe giving that to the audience a little bit earlier, that like this must be a joy to listen to.
No, this whole podcast is about process though. And people are enjoying like the little minutia of the thing they see, of like, so we had to earn the trust of the audience and build a hard sketch. So then later when we seemed like we didn't know what was going on, they felt comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and then there's also these moments, like the biggest laugh in our show that Brian's talking about comes from, it's a payoff to 2 like 30-second bits that get no laughter and need to get no laughter.
Yeah, we have to bomb to then get a great laugh. Or I guess like, I have to bomb.
Yeah, Brian has to do 2 monologues that bomb. And what we found is
those moments.
We've done...
I like them now too.
We did versions of the show where those moments got more laughter. Like we'd come up with a framing device for those moments to make them kind of funny. And it hurts the payoff because it's like the audience laughs even harder later on, knowing, oh, that's why those moments bombed so hard.
Yeah.
And also it is showmanship, right? It's magic to go, you made me think you were bad, but you're good.
Yeah, it's a little sleight of hand trick a little bit.
Yes, very much.
And there's like a few moments, we've taken some of these out, but we had built in a few mistakes in the show. And what that had the effect of doing during all of our work in progress is, because like stuff technically would go wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And because we had built in mistakes, at the end of the show, people would be like, I have no idea what actually went wrong.
Which is like, again, I think ego comes into play then.
Yeah.
Because you're a little bit like good, that's a little bit meta, but then you're also like, hey, but I worked really hard to place that specific one.
Yeah. It's a bit of a cheat again if you kind of have these fumbles, because then when something goes wrong, people are like, I had no idea. So you have the safety net of things can go wrong, whereas everything is like tight, then you really have to keep it on the rails.
Yeah.
Not that one's better than the other. It's just very interesting that when we were doing that, like these work in progresses with these fake things that go wrong that then pay off. Anytime it did go off the rails, it was like, we're fine. The show looks like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
It's kind of like the thing, like that Gene No, Gene Wilder. I was right. In Willy Wonka, when he talks about this moment where he first comes out with the cane. He comes out with the cane, and then he loses the cane, and then he does a somersault. And he talked about, he was like, we have to do that because from that moment on, you won't know what's real with
You
this
can't
guy.
trust me.
And there's a few things that we do early on in the show that make the audience go, oh shit, I have no idea what's real. Like what's a real mess up and what's not.
And you're building the stakes for yourself for the payoff to win, right? Because in like, you can't trust me, when you can, it's like,
Yeah.
But it does, like, think about like that whole wobble walkout and then somersault into whatever. It's not a funny moment. No. It's not a comfortable moment. It's not a character building moment. It is a device that is needed for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you just have to have confidence that not every moment has to land a joke if you want to like pay it off in the best way later on.
And what's also interesting, going back to that first show, you know, to some extent, I think these are the early shows of this were always going to fail a little bit because we need to, as the performers, have the confidence that this is going to work. Like, you need a few shows under your belt to go, this is going to pay off.
To get them on board.
I'm comfortable that, you know, you just gain confidence because it's like, yes, you're not going to like this part and then you're going to love it later. And I know that because now 3 audiences or however many audiences have loved it. And once you get that confidence as a performer, it's just the show just gets so much better from that.
They can feel, and like audiences can't put words to it, but when you sit in an uncomfortable moment and you're insecure and you're like, I hope you like this, people can feel it. So then they get worried for you or they whatever. But when you sit confidently, even if you're messing up, they can feel it.
Yeah, I've seen a few shows at Fringe. I saw a great show a few nights ago, and this guy only had a few people in the audience. It was his first show. And he did great. Like every once in a while I look around the audience and be like, oh right, there's like a few people here. Oh well. And he just like committed and did an awesome, great show. And at the end, he like deeply apologized to me. And I was like,
why?
Dude, I didn't, because I know this feeling because he was like, there's no one in the audience. He's hearing not much laughter. He doesn't think it's good. But then I was like, oh, I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking like, it's crazy there's not more people here. This guy's freaking awesome. It almost made me be like, you're amazing, and I can't wait to tell more people about you. But I've been in his situation where, and then we had another friend, I saw her do stand-up, and it was great, and she was so confident the whole way through.
Wait, name names.
I saw Janine Haruni.
And then the other person, so people can look.
Blake Everett.
Great, perfect.
And they're both amazing. And Janine's show, she felt like the laughter was like, she was like, that show, you saw that one? The audience was so dead. And in my head, I was like, yeah, but I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about how good you were, and I thought you were great. And it's weird because when I'm on the other side of that, I'm like, when people are at a show that I think sucks, I'm like, I'm so sorry you were there.
Why'd you come to that one?
Right.
It's always that.
It's always it's happened so much to me too, where I see somebody and they're like, "Oh, you came on the bad night."
Yes.
And I'm always like, I kind of, if I enjoyed the show, I love that because I'm like, oh, it makes me feel so much better about our bad nights.
Yes.
Because I'm like, oh, that didn't, like, I loved that show.
Yeah.
And I saw it on a bad night.
And it's almost like if I saw it in a big crowd where everyone was laughing, if that person was like, see, it's good, I think I'd be like, yeah, I know. They responded the way in my head everyone should have been responded on the bad night. I get it. That's how I feel. So, but it's weird. But when it's you're like, no, you just do the exact same thing.
It's also last night we were at Stamptown or we did Stamptown, and Martin Urbano, an incredibly funny stand-up.
So funny.
Does this recurring bit in the show. It's one of my favorite bits in the show. And I was watching him like, yeah, Martin's killing. And he started talking on stage about how he was bombing. And I remember remarking to people backstage being like, why does he think he's bombing? I think he's doing really well. And it's like, I find that always very reassuring to know, yeah, you can't trust yourself necessarily.
Well, also it's like, I think there's the fine line of like, I always say like, hey, that was good for you. And I can appreciate that was a great show. I want to be my best. And if I don't feel like I did my best, that's why I'm frustrated. But I think a lot of people think they did bad if they didn't do their best. And they're like, oh, you saw a bad show. And I've kind of gotten in the practice with this show of just saying thank you and not saying like, it wasn't my best show. Because I also don't want to show my cards of like,
that's good.
It was bad. It's like, no, I know what I need to fix. I was not happy with my performance, but I appreciate that you got something
That's
from it.
really mature. Like I want to be that person, but when I think a friend of mine sees a bad show, I go, did you saw a bad one? I have to like tell them, and it sucks because I shouldn't. It's not the best way to be.
Yeah, because it's, when you think about it, I'm the same, but what you are saying is your opinion is wrong. Like I don't
it is
respect your opinion.
A little bit that, and the only time I've done it was yesterday. I had 3 tech failures, and for the first time I had to break and do crowd work and be like, because there's like a really emotional part, and I had to be like, hey guys, like after this we're gonna gear back up for maybe like to really just talk with them. And then, a comic friend was in the audience and he was like, great job. I was like, just so you know, that is not how the show normally goes. And that was kind of like, I almost felt like I was betraying myself a little instead of just being like, thanks, friend.
Right.
No, I think if something actively goes
okay,
wrong,
that's true.
You're well within your bounds. Like, hey, so normally like the power doesn't
normally
shut down
I don't
to the
explain
theater.
the Buffy episode where she's in the insane asylum and then ask if the audience has seen it. Wait, okay, before we get carried away, because I love talking about this. Hello. Oh, it's not a bee, it's a fly. Oh,
Yeah, we live with flies.
well,
Once Natalie Palamides moved in.
that's so fun. No mold, but tons of flies. So what I got excited because my producer Erica is wonderful and she does really thoughtful research. And one of the things that I thought was so charming is that you guys, when you were younger, did creative stuff together at summer camp.
Yeah.
Yes and no. So we grew up both in Atlanta. We went to the same preschool, same Little League baseball team. We went to the same performing arts camp, but we never met through any of that. Oh. And we met in high school and became friends. And then when we went to college together, and one winter break, we were watching a video from this camp, and we were both on stage next to each other performing mime.
There's a photo of it we captured from a VHS.
My heart.
From 1999.
Well, but to that point, especially with this idea of fringe, right, where it's like people are like, it's summer camp for theater kids. I wonder if creatively you feel like that camp for you individually and then together sort of formed the way you make or write or put stuff together.
I think what that camp specifically did for me, probably I would guess similarly to Brian, is I went to it. I was a very shy kid. I had sort of mentioned I'd done like a school play, and I mentioned to my parents that I liked it. And my parents were really great at just being like, oh, you're interested in this? We'll sign you up for classes.
And you had just been bullied for Kocher.
Yeah. And so they sent me to this performing arts summer camp that was like a week-long camp. And, I was in like public school and kind of like, it was like, I did not feel safe coming out of my shell, being kind of the weird person that I was. And coming to this camp, it's like the first day there's like, some kid wearing a crazy costume singing at the top of his lungs, like everyone's gay.
Giving you permission, though, to be anything you are.
Yeah, and it was just like, and all of that was embraced and supported and stuff like that. And it was just like, and it took me like a few days because I was like, this like traumatized little kid.
Oh,
and then it was like day 3, I was out of my shell and like being weird and being silly and goofy. And it was just like embraced and supported. And it was like a really wonderful, safe space for that.
I think, a lot of kids went to that camp, felt that, but same. It was to the point where I was like, that it's heaven to go to the Atlanta Workshop Players Summer Camp. Because you go there for a week and like you truly were with all these weirdos. And like every day was just packed with like improv classes, juggling classes, seeing shows, all these counselors and teachers who were comedians and working actors themselves. Who were like, there's one guy named Jamie Moore who both Nick and I independently as kids were like, that is the funniest man on the planet.
Funniest person on the planet.
And then he like basically taught both of us improv, and then we're still friends with him to this day. But like, it was a place where it was like, for weird kids, it felt like there weren't that many of them in school, and maybe they didn't have that big of an outlet to perform. All of a sudden, you got to just like indulge in that for a week. You didn't even know there was a place like this that existed, and then like you'd leave and be like, oh, when is next June? Come on, let's go. Yeah. It was really a very, very special place.
And I'm curious to how you guys have experienced this, because I do think toxic masculinity hurts everyone, and I think especially for straight cis young white men, like not white men, but whatever men, straight cis men. There is a lot of, there's a judgment of sensitivity, a judgment of otherness, and there isn't a space. And I know it's, it sounds silly to be like, there isn't a space for you guys, but genuinely, like there should be inclusive spaces for all people to feel accepted. And I know marginalized spaces exist for people who haven't been accepted by the commonality, but for little weirdos, little sweeties, to have that. And then to also be around people who are other, who are queer, and be exposed to that and know that. I think it is so healing for everyone and so important.
Yeah, I think a lot about like, why are we doing this? Why are we like, coming to the Fringe and like
why the hell are we doing this?
Putting our bodies through what is objectively not good treatment. And like in pursuing this career in the arts, and it's like I just remember being like, what actually is my goal with this? Like, what are we doing? What are we making this art for? Because I think you forget. And I was like, I don't even know if I've actually known the answer to this. And I think like a few years ago, I was like thinking about it, and I was like, you know what I think it is like it's like when I was getting bullied, when I was like in high school and just not really knowing what my life is going to be yet, and not feeling great about it. I remember like, there was these comedy shows, like alt comedy shows, like The State on MTV.
Oh, yeah. And Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah, like there'd be these incredibly silly alt comedy, like not like mainstream stuff, like old school where everybody loved old school, but it's like nobody knew MTV's The State. And like there were like certain sketches in that I found really funny. And I remember just being like, oh my God, I don't feel alone. Because like somebody else shares this weird brand of humor. And it's like how Brian and I became friends was like quoting, Brian Regan's stand-up routines.
Really?
And it's like,
yeah.
And there's like all these different people in my life where it's like, oh, I quoted some Monty Python sketch in like when I was living in North Carolina.
And you see, it's like, you light up. It's like, you're one of me.
Yeah. It's like, you're like me. And so I was like, you know what? That's, I think, why, like if there is a goal to this,
calling cards for other lonely people.
Like little dog whistles for nerdy kids.
Oh, a kid can send a BriTANicK video and be like, oh, you understand me a little bit.
People come up to us after shows. They're like, either like they became best friends and we quote your stuff, or it's like, I met my girlfriend the first night I met her. I made her watch your videos, and then now we're married. And I'm like,
hell yeah,
cool.
Yo, you smooth as hell, brother.
We're sort of matchmakers.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I definitely didn't come up with this, but it's like I think it's like we make art to make people feel less alone.
Of course.
And I think that's that's such a cool thing. And I think it's good to remember that you're doing it for that and not to get on a TV show or whatever.
Not me. I do it for TV.
No, I want money. Well, I think it's also nice to remember because this Fringe, there's been so many issues where I'm like, hey, I either need to go punch someone or sing a song.
And I've seen you almost punch someone.
Can I say, for the viewers, this was like maybe our second night being friends.
I didn't really know you that well, but then I got to know you really well.
And I cracked. And it was like, I don't crack in front of like my closest friends. And it was this moment where I was like, oh, like Demi, Nick, and Brian are really taking care of me as friends because they did not judge me for screaming in someone's face.
Well, that's another thing about this festival that is beautiful is that I don't care who you are. You've had a bad show. You've had a poorly attended show. You've had a shitty review. Nobody's getting like perfect reviews.
No one gets out alive, really.
Yeah.
No
and so like you see, and it's like you're performing every single night. So one night you're going to have a great show and like another person's going to have the worst show of their life. And you've been there and everyone's so like, nobody's like, no, it's great. I feel like people are like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. And there's this empathetic, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no judgment.
I know what you're
doesn't
feeling.
protect you from it either.
Yeah. Oh, I think in fact it attracts it more.
Yeah.
I think you
What do
get
you
shit
mean?
on more.
People who are like famous sometimes come to the Fringe thinking they're going to run the Fringe, and either they don't sell the tickets or the show's not reviewed well, and they kind of or maybe are lazy with their show, and it's really like, and then someone unknown clown is like, the festival.
Yeah.
And it's oh yeah, you can't just coast on status here.
you really can't. But to the point of like the way that you guys are giving access to people to express art, and like I really think is why a lot of kids are isolated and causing violence and harm, is because they don't have artistic outlets.
Yeah.
I definitely, it's crazy to me when schools cut funding for one thing and it's the arts. I'm just sort of like that. It's like the pressure release valve for kids.
Is.
Like, give it, you have to. Like,
And then they won't ask a bouncer if they've ever fucked a single one time in their life.
That's right. That was...
You asked the bouncer, have you fucked one single time in your life? Which, by the way, he might not have.
No, okay, can I say
they're like
that?
19.
No, he hated women. No, my sister didn't know that. But that guy, you can feel, and I've seen him several times, he hates women. And I feel so comfortable. I feel so good that I yelled at him. You could feel him big dogging every female body walking through, and you're like,
oh my gosh.
ugh. But yeah, it was also because Brian on the way out, who had like really patiently stood with me while I was like,
I just watched.
yeah. And then Brian goes like, thanks, man, on the way out. I was like, oh, that's when I
said, thanks, man. And then Mo was like,
Oh, yeah, I heard this.
It's like, we're thanking?
That's right. Mo was like, oh, we're thanking him now?
This man who's never fucked in his life.
I don't know, Mo. We're just trying to get out of the building.
Trying to get out alive.
But it is like to use my breakout for good. I think that to have, when you have these feelings or frustration or feel like you're literally getting bounced from a community or a world and no one sees you, to then have an outlet of like, oh, I found these guys' videos and they made me feel like seen, or like I want to make them myself. It is so vital, and it cannot be undermined as some just YouTube. It's like, no, that can save lives, and that's not.
And I think also something, as we sort of, a lot of us comedians rate our shows by how much audible laughter there was.
Immediately, yeah.
It's like oftentimes the things that, the movies that I deeply love, the shows that I deeply love are very rarely the ones that are like across the board, everybody really likes that. Yeah. It's like they tend to be the things that people are kind of split on.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, there was something really interesting happening here. And even if it wasn't necessarily successful, I love that this show or this movie was trying to do this. Like,
attempted
I'm more
something.
Interested in that, like in these movies, like the guy who did Donnie Darko, I forget his name.
I forget. Yeah.
The director. All of his movies I'm obsessed with, and they're not well reviewed.
No.
But I'm like, he's trying something really interesting here.
He's not trying to make a hit. You know what I mean? He's like artistically trying to execute a feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I really like about doing the Fringe is, as an artist, it used to always be this when you perform. You perform in festivals and live, and you get to, every time you do it, you get to feel a response. You talk to people afterwards. They say, thank you for doing that. That was really nice. And you really feel like you're contributing. When you work on YouTube and on Instagram, you feel so far removed, or TikTok, that so many now young performers, that's sort of the only time they perform. And you get comments and likes. They don't really feel like anything. Ever. At least to me, they've never felt like one person saying one thing live to me after a show feels like everything.
Wow.
100 comments, I don't even sense it. And as a performer, I also feel like you're very privileged to get to live a life where you get to kind of play for a living. I mean, there's some hardships to it, but like, sometimes feel guilty what I do because it's so fun. You get to travel and do all, and hang out with these people, that I want to make sure that like I am giving back with what I'm doing. And when you perform live, you really do feel that. You really feel when people laugh and they see a great show, that you're like part of the the ecosystem of the world a little bit. Whereas when you're just online, you can kind of feel like you're just putting out a bunch of stuff, and you don't, just that feedback isn't really there, and that can drive me crazy. Because
it's like live performance is it's like how we literally every performer started is it's like you gather your parents' friends at a dinner party, and you're like, all right, it's time for my show, and it's just you doing your little show
to all 8 minutes and 30 seconds of Don McLean's American Pie.
Right,
free dancing.
It's like nobody starts out.
Did we all dance to American Pie?
Did we all?
I feel like that is a song when you discovered as a kid. You're like, I've got to just like vibe and dance and like
all
figure
of
out
our
this song.
Parents loved it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it is that live thing. It is like we got that live feedback, and now I do get worried because I don't think I don't know what's the word when you're like righteous. I'm like, oh, I'm helping people. But I'm like, no. It is vital that performers who are doing this value what they're doing, because the impact is so much more massive. And the outlets and platforms that the internet gives them is magnificent and wonderful and gives reach to more people. But I'm hoping that what happens because of that is other people physically connect, have, friendships, go to places and if you can't, I love my own neurodivergent community that needs to stay home. But at its core, it is asking you to, reach out to someone, be present with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's it's soon going to be the only avenue I think we have left as the machines take over.
Bless those girls.
Oh yeah, we're thinking about that where it's as the machines are inevitably taking over, the one thing they really can't do is perform at Fringe and fuck it.
Oh yeah, perform at Fringe.
I mean, it can. But
I want them to because I want them to go through this hell.
Yeah, they'll kill themselves.
Oh my god! And then all of a sudden we'll realize how resilient we were when all the machines killed themselves at Fringe.
Right. Yeah. It's just funny being a clown is now becoming one of the careers that's maybe the most sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of it may be around the longest.
People ask me right away. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing stand up here. They're like, you're a clown. You're a clown.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. They're overtaking us all.
Well, to this point, to keep us on track, I do have a final segment, and I think this is very related to what we're speaking about, because in my play, I write about a moment where I was at my darkest, right? And this person just gave me a compliment out of the blue, and it wasn't anything about the compliment. It was just kind of the sheer odds that this person bumped into me at that moment and said something to me and was present with me. And it felt like it saved my whole life. Mm-hmm. And so I have this segment that Sudi and I do for each other. It's called Thank You for Holding My Poems. And it's based on the Russian poet Anna Akhmatova, who during the Great Terror it was illegal for her to publish her poems because they were so revolutionary. So all of her dearest friends and collaborators would memorize edits for her and hold each poem as she grew with it and created it. And I think poems to me are these single moments where one person comes up to you after a show and you realize the impact you're having and you realize what you want to keep going. And it's these small private moments, these little acts that can change your whole life. And so I'd be curious for you guys to speak to one that's maybe stuck with you that might seem small, so you're not talking about it all the time, but we'd like to hear it here and hold your poem.
I think this counts for what this is. I think I just told this around you, Nick, but I've been thinking about this recently. One time when I was I was young. I was probably 11 or 12. I was in the car with my dad, and I was playing probably on CD. Do you remember this song called the Sunscreen Song? Do you know this song?
Baz Luhrmann, wear sunscreen?
The Baz Luhrmann Sunscreen Song. It's just sort of like a bunch of advice.
Move before you get soft.
That one.
Yeah.
And then it had brother and sister. Yes! And it was I think around 1999, a lot of graduations used it.
And Quentin Tarver sang that, and he did When Doves Cry in Romeo plus Juliet.
Yes, that's right. Romeo plus Juliet. So anyway, I was really into that song, and my dad and I were he was driving, and I was playing that over the speakers. And there was one line in that song, and the line is approximately, don't be scared if you don't know what you want to do with your life. Some of the more interesting people I know didn't know at 21 what they wanted to do with theirs. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. That was the line. I remember my dad turned the music down, and he was like, Brian, that is the best advice you will ever hear. He's like, I want you to remember, whatever you do, you never have to know what you're doing. That is completely real.
Wow.
Don't know if you're 40, if you're 50, if you don't know what you want to do, that's not only fine, it's probably better. And I don't know if it's a moment my dad even remembers telling me, but I think I remember even in high school, a lot of my friends had parents that really wanted them to be certain things, and it really affected where they went to school and what jobs they got. But it just that moment always stuck with me. And now I've never been worried about what I am or where I'm going or what my career is or anything, which I think is really helpful as an artist, because it's really putting labels on who you are is something we just kind of naturally do in society. And it's hard to then pivot from them if you want to change. And I just kind of got permission early from a small comment from my dad to just kind of always be a feather in the wind. So
wow,
that was a nice moment.
That is so beautiful. And it's also really beautiful because it feels like you can get that advice at a time of high stakes, when you're choosing college or whatever.
Right.
But to get it when it might not mean anything to you at that time,
right,
but to know it's altering your brain chemistry,
yeah,
that is so beautiful.
Yeah, I can visualize the moment so clearly. So
I can see it when you're talking about it. Yeah, I'm like, well, there's a tape deck. There's
tape deck with a cord.
Yes, exactly. Oh, that is so beautiful. Thank you for your poem.
You're welcome.
Wow. I love that. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's great. We were just talking. We had like a lovely brunch yesterday with Elf Lyons and Natalie Palomides, and we were talking about like kind of, I guess, what made us go into this field and stuff like that. And yeah, I think mine would be, this is something you know that can really happen a lot in this industry is you get, you know, jealous of your friends or competitive or whatever. And I remember in college, there was this special program that like Moises Kaufman came to, who was this great writer, director.
The Laramie Project.
Oh, wow.
And, other great things. And it was like some special workshop that he was going to do. I think it's, I don't know, 6-week workshop, something. And you auditioned for it, and it was, very, very exclusive. And I auditioned, and I remember having a great audition, feeling really good about it. And him, literally, he winked at me and he said, "I'll see you real soon." And I was like, I got it. And then I didn't get it. And I was like,
no.
Well, what the hell was that about, Moises?
Oh my God. But
why
I was
like,
why do that to a kid?
Well, it's who knows? He may have been like, he'll definitely be in, and then somebody better, whatever. That doesn't matter.
Yes.
But so I didn't get in, and all of my friends did. So it was like all of my close friends were in it, and I was really bummed that I didn't get in. And I remember going out with my buddy Alex Anfinger and being like, yeah, I'm just bummed about the Moises thing. And he was like, well, I don't know how this is gonna maybe come across, because he had gotten this advice from Moises, because he's like, this is in the program that you didn't get. But he said this, and it had a profound effect on me. Where he was just like, Moises said, you know, something that's really important for us to do is make sure to not make your friends' successes your failures. And it was just like phrasing it like that in that simple little quippy way. It's such a great phrase, because it's, you know, it's this scarcity mentality that there's not enough to go around, and it's so easy to feel that way. But it's like, that is what you're doing, and it's like, oh, I don't want to be doing that. And it's something that I often come back to and think about, of like, yes, we're all on the same team. Like,
what I love about that is it, you know, usually like, don't compare yourself to others, value yourself. Yeah. It makes it all about you. But what that feels like is as a call to community.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, no, this isn't about you. Don't make these other people about you. And actually, that's not being a supportive friend. And that's not.
And it's just making you aware of what you're doing. You're making this person's success your failure. And when you see it like that, you're like, well, that's not true. That can't be true. Someone else succeeding doesn't mean I fail.
And it's very common in our industry. Oh my gosh. So many people are like, I'm happy for you, but this just sucks. And you're like, God, it's hard to hold this space for you right now. Yeah. But it is really nice for you to be able to take that in, because I think there's a level of consideration there of going, oh my gosh. Hey, for a second there, I was getting in my head. I was getting, you know, worried about me. And then I was asked to support my community. And I said yes.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. I also think, like, in a weird way, not the opposite is true, but like that people who are succeeding, like, I think it is worth being aware that this is maybe going to make your friend feel insecure and scared, and and having empathy and being like, and not taking that too personally is also, I would say, good advice too.
But I have a question now, because we have a little bit of time, but I'm sure that, especially because the levels that you guys have worked at, you know, dream jobs of everyone we know, SNL, that sort of thing, I think sometimes it is hard when you are also like caring for others around you, that you sometimes are asked to be made smaller for them to be comfortable. And I'm wondering how you guys navigate that while towing the line between not making yourself smaller, but holding space for people's insecurities.
What you do is you get fired from those institutions.
Okay, everyone know.
Get humbled. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I've not felt that much from our friends. Like, I think our friends have been really good about that. It also helps that our friends tend to be more successful than us. So that could also be part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Brian's head is full of words right now. He's not saying. It's incredible.
No, I mean, we have, I guess, what's the main thing we're talking about here? Being small. How do you not
making yourself like, like
Well, even,
downplaying your own achievements to make others feel comfortable.
Yeah,
you
when
mean?
you are on the up and up and succeeding in these spaces, you know, a lot of people who you care about a lot might let their insecurities rule.
So what's interesting about Nick and me is we kind of came out of the gate pretty hot out of college, like because YouTube we started when we were seniors, and then we kind of had like early little viral successes and got an agent, had these like jobs in our early 20s before like any one of our friends had jobs. So I kind of felt like we had this thing where we were kind of growing, and then after SNL, I feel like we kind of hibernated for a minute, and a lot of our friends had this like surge that didn't when we were going up, and that made me feel crazy. And then I felt like I got a little jealous for a while because I think it was a good learning experience for me because I was like, wait, what? Because we had a natural correction I think that needed to happen for a second, and it made me realize like there is no room to feel like you're high and mighty or be super jealous of anyone because one, everything is always in flux, and two, it's a really bad look to ever feel that way. And I did have times where I was making other people's successes my failures, and I had to really recognize that in myself, and then I even apologized to a few friends of mine because I was like, I wasn't a good friend to you for like 2 years, but then they were like, it was happening with them too when things were down.
It's everything. I mean, this industry moves in waves, and you have like hot streaks, and then there's the doldrums, and it's like that's not gonna ever stop. It's just that's the nature of things, and you just kind of have to keep your head down and keep your eyes on your own paper.
And the people that you can continually trust, right, are the people who like admit we have these feelings and take accountability because we all have them.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, that would be my sort of thought of like, in terms of downplaying yourself, it's like, yeah, definitely like you can, I think it's just having empathy for everybody, you know,
just not being a sociopath.
Like just being like this person, like, yes, my friend who is much more successful than me is complaining about their job, which would be my dream job. And I'm really annoyed, but it's like, knowing like, yeah, but like this is also your friend who's wanting help from you in this moment.
And I've noticed that at Fringe where I got a little mad at some people because it was like someone was sold out and another person didn't sell out, and then the person who was sold out was like, I'm frustrated with this, and the person who wasn't sold out wasn't holding space for any issue.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, like, and what's beautiful about this space right here is we can work through those feelings fast, but it is frustrating sometimes to watch in real time.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's like, it's kind of why we come to Fringe is like, because people have told us like, you don't have to go to Fringe anymore because we have a bit of a career in Hollywood. And part of me is like, that's why we have to come, because we have to remind ourselves that you're never above coming, starting from scratch, sweating on the stage with everyone else and trying to get yourself on equal playing field and reproving yourself. I think if there's a way in which you can get a little bit of like security and you're like, great, I'm just going to sit here behind my huge following and just kind of be here and untouchable. But then it's like, well, what if you go shake things up and just sort of like, go back to Monkey Barrel and see what happens? Like that's a crazy risky thing to do, but it reminds everyone like, I'm here with you still. I'm still trying like you guys.
And you're also seeing these incredible shows, and it's like I'm so much more wanting to impress the weird clowns performing for 12 people here than I am
like me so bad.
Anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, like if they're like, this celebrity is coming to your show, if I don't know them, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. But if they're like, Josh Glantz is here, I'm like, we kind of put on a good show for
Yeah, you're like, holy shit. Oh my God, I keep joking that there's this Parks and Rec episode where Leslie's freaking out over Janine Restrepo, who is like a 3rd district council person that nobody knows. And that's my vibe here. I'm like, oh my God, Janine Restrepo's here.
Janine Restrepo. That's so funny.
Yeah, so that's the vibe. Well, I do have to wrap this up. I think all of us do.
Yeah.
I appreciate you both so much for talking.
Of course, this was lovely.
And also, I appreciate the friendship that I've gotten being here at Fringe with both of you.
Yes,
it's so wonderful.
Been so great to meet you. And
We're brothers in arms.
Oh, brothers in arms. We said night one. Yeah. Brothers in arms forever.
I was going to say, anyone who's not a virgin or is a virgin, we're going to kill him.
Yeah, you're just going to clap in his face. Oh, my God. You know what? Again, I'm just going to really own this and tell the story over and over again until it's like, I'm iconic and I'm not full of shame and grief, you know? Okay, but if you guys want to list any places people want to find you or, tell any people you hate that you hate them.
Anybody who's in the UK, we're at the Fringe until August 25th, and then we go to Soho Theatre in London from August 27th to August 31st.
You can find us online, our YouTube channel, BriTANicK, and then also we have a Patreon now, patreon.com/BriTANicK, where we have a weekly talk show that's really fun, and we have other, hopefully, big projects coming out soon if things move forward, which they never do.
Hey. All right, well, thank you all. I love you all with all of my heart, always and forever, and until next time.
Au revoir.
Okay.
I genuinely think you guys are special people. And if you're listening, I have thought of you because I think of whoever's listening. So you think no one's thinking of you, baby? Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek is hosted by me, Mo Fry-Pasek. You can learn more about this week's guest and the Worse Than You team by checking out the show and episode copy. It's on your phone, the thing you are touching so often. Sanitize it, my God. For more on our journey to the Fringe and to buy tickets to Worse Than You, the stage play, which, excuse me, let's do that, head to worsethanYouPlay.com and make sure to follow us on Instagram. I know you're scrolling constantly and, well, it's the least you could do. Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek is produced by Disco Nap and Kinahora Productions. Oh my God, you're so pretty.